Hey everybody, welcome back. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our listeners. This is the When Life Gives You Lemons podcast presented by Dayspring Bank. I'm your host, Stephen Ashworth, and we're here with my new good friend, Tom Simmons. Welcome to the show.
Wow, Stephen, I'm a bit starstruck here. Big Creighton fan, so it's cool to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. We appreciate you coming on, and obviously, as a Creighton basketball player, appreciate your support. The community is top notch, and I tell all of my friends and family and everyone who asks how special Omaha is, and it's thanks to people like you.
Well, you're kind to say that. All I'm going to want to talk to you about is Creighton basketball. So I don't know about this Lemons thing, but in the interest of my friends at Dayspring Bank, we'll try to sort of stay on topic, right? But
yeah, we have a few tangents in there, no doubt. And the questions and comments can go back and forth. But the podcast that we've started here really focuses on the entrepreneurial spirit and giving our listeners an outlook of different experiences, different stories, and everybody's story is so different, and there's so much to learn from everybody's life experiences. And so if you wouldn't mind, just give the audience just a little bit of your background and where you got started and kind of how you found your entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, well, we were kind of teasing earlier, but there's a lot of truth to it. Sometimes when you have certain skill sets or the lack thereof, you kind of get pushed into a direction. And I went to Creighton University, and nobody was going to suggest that I was a stellar student. So, my options were maybe a little bit more limited. So when that happens, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because I was not going to go to any formidable law firm or accounting firm or something of that, or bank for that matter. So
Dayspring wasn't looking to hire you. Is that what you're saying?
I'm guessing that at the time that would have been the last thing on their mind, and probably correctly so. So honestly, in all sincerity, there is a little bit of that. If you beat to a little bit of a different drum, you kind of have an independent spirit, but you also see potential and skills that maybe are outside of the norm, but maybe don't fit in the box. Yeah. It's an opportunity to do something different. So sometimes it's really kind of a weird thought, but you can almost get pushed into an entrepreneurial path by the virtue of what your skill set is and your mindset, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally think I can relate to that. Just of the aspect of, I think you also see the world in a different way sometimes when you're looking at different experiences. And so what was your first kind of entrepreneurial venture? Mine was actually, funny enough, I sold salsa door to door. And so my dad had a family friend who made this unbelievable salsa. They started a little Mexican restaurant out there in Utah, and it was about 25 minutes south of our home. So all of our neighbors, we had shared the salsa with them, but then they weren't really excited to drive 25 minutes to go and get it. So I'd go drive 25 minutes and then make a little door-to-door delivery. And that was how, I raised money and saved up money in high school. But what was your kind of first entrepreneurial venture?
Well, that is a cool story. I have something that's basketball related, actually, which just occurred to me. So I'm from Phoenix, and so the Phoenix Suns, we were rabid Phoenix Suns fans, still to this day.
Who was playing when you're
oh
big
gosh
fan?
So you're talking like Alvin Adams, Dennis Johnson, Maurice Lucas. These are you go way back. But
was Barkley on the
so
Suns,
that would have been in the 90s.
Okay.
But yes, Charles Barkley was definitely a Sun. So anyway, I was in high school similar to you, and it's like, man, it was the Denver Nuggets, first round in the NBA playoffs. It's in the 80s, so the NBA was probably in a little bit of a lull relative to, its star power. And but I was going to buy all these tickets, right? And there wasn't, there's no internet, so there wasn't any of these online portals, StubHub, Ticket Express, whatever. That just didn't exist.
For sure.
And so, scalpers did it the old-fashioned way. They went and bought tickets, extracted tickets and from whatever venue they could, and they went out and they peddled them, in front of the stadium. There's some of that today, but much less.
For sure.
So I bought, I think they were like $17. And I learned a hard lesson about supply and demand. So I went and bought a bunch of Upper Bowl tickets, and as many as I could afford. I think I had a couple $1,000s worth of them. And what I realized was there wasn't a heck of a lot of demand for the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns at the Upper Bowl in the first round of the NBA playoffs at circa day 1986 or 7.
Yeah.
And so I lost a ton of money, which most entrepreneurs do several times before they meet there. But I think the moral of the story is that you got to know when you're looking at things as an entrepreneur, the first thing you have to discern is whether there's a market for your product. Because no matter how good you are at something or your service, no matter how good you are, you could be the most talented person in the whole world in a certain discipline. But if nobody wants what you're peddling, there's no opportunity. So that was an incredible lesson to learn early. And then that kind of evolved into, ironically, as a senior, not dissimilar, a little younger than you are now, but not dissimilar to your situation, I actually ran, with my dad's help, purchased and ran the Blue Jay Bar, which was right off campus on 24th. In California.
That's awesome.
It's not there anymore. Yeah. But we had a 4 or 5 year run, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what not to do and a few things about what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Blue Jay Bar, was that like what were the hours? What were you doing? What was the day-to-day like at the Blue Jay Bar for those 4 or 5 years?
Oh, man. So like, I probably, this is a family friendly show, so I should probably be fairly careful, but it was a incredible experience. And I did learn a lot. So, you know, we were serving burgers by day and slinging beers by night, and a lot of late nights but it was an incredible experience because you had to learn how to, you know, run a payroll, understand payroll taxes, understand sales tax, understand your cost of goods sold, what your product costs, how you should price it, understand demand and elasticity for, you know, what the consumer is willing to pay. You know, obviously in a college environment, you have to figure out, hey, how are we going to get a bunch of people in here, but still price things to where we can make money at it? So where that sweet spot is, those were incredible opportunities to learn about all facets of the business. You know, you were everything from the janitor to the CFO. So it was a really, really great learning experience for my wife and I. We were very blessed and had some success, and it was a really good opportunity to kind of set the stage for further endeavors.
Yeah. Would it be safe to say if Blue Jay Bar was still in business, we'd have an NIL deal going on with, you know, maybe a $5 burger or something, the Stephen Ashworth burger? What do you think?
I don't know how you couldn't, right? I mean, and it is cool, you know, kind of transitioning into that conversation. You know, I really think that student athletes deserve the opportunity to be compensated for their skills, and I think ultimately, like all things, it's market driven, right?
Yeah.
And anything ultimately that's market driven, you know, we call it the invisible hand. That's an economic term. You know, things sort their way through, and I think it's been a really cool thing because you had mentioned earlier off camera about the game being elevated because, you know, people can stay longer and they mature in their role, and there's an economic viability for them versus other opportunities. And I think that's so important to recognize that markets are created, you know, as a result of the aggregate behavior of people, and things sort themselves out. And I think the nil will naturally sort itself out. It makes a lot of sense. And sure, maybe there's some tweaks here and there. Nothing's perfect, but the concept is powerful. And yeah, the Stephen Ashworth burger, that needs to be a thing for sure.
I love it. If there's any restaurants in town that are selling burgers, we'll get on it.
Yeah, but, I think you got a market for that. I think you need to get out there and hustle that.
I probably should. Probably should. Too much time in the gym right now and then changing diapers. But if I had a little more time, would be out there. But I agree with you. I think that, you know, NIL is in a stage right now where it's unique. As you know, I'm a business student and have loved marketing and entrepreneurship. I think it's fascinating to where it's at in a place to where it feels like it's somewhat of a charitable donation right now. But next year when the revenue sharing comes into play in the NCAA, I think that's really going to be where it belongs, because you look at the television, there's games all night long, and you know, the ad revenue that comes in from those types of things, that's where I think the players should be getting compensated. And so I'm actually really excited not only for the players but also for the donors for that, because right now with NIL, I feel like an unnecessary burden has been placed on our donors for all universities to not only support the coaches and the athletic department and the buildings and facilities, but now you have to pay the salary of the players as well. And it's like we have other revenue streams that I'm excited for those to branch into.
Well, I think, and obviously you're a super astute and capable guy, and, your skill set will transcend basketball. Hopefully we're going to get to see a lot of you in that capacity, because you're so fun to watch, how cerebral you are coming off screens and doing what you do. But clearly you've got other opportunities. The opportunities are endless. And I think it's intelligent, appropriate, fair, equitable to look at, hey, when people are producing opportunities for universities or anybody, they should be compensated for that. So that's a fundamental principle.
Yeah.
I think, moreover, though, if some of the goal is to keep student athletes engaged in the university process and want to get, if the ultimate goal is to try to get extended educational opportunities and I guess the end goal actually, graduating with a degree, this is also an avenue to enhance that opportunity. Not exclusively, but it's certainly, if you look at Creighton, not commenting specifically, but look at several people that are some of our best players, right? That have reached fruition in their career at Creighton. That in of itself isn't maybe an unintended consequence, but it's a benefit for them and societally and what have you. It's a good thing that people are furthering their education.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And I think that as you said, there's some things to probably tweak out, but it's going to get there, and it's going to be a great thing overall. And I actually want to discuss a little bit. You go from the Blue Jay bar, and then now I know where you've ended up. How did you get into real estate? And was it immediately after the bar, or what kind of transitioned you into real estate?
So I had many years that I spent in the restaurant business, and it is a brutal business. We're here at Let It Fly, which has just been a great addition to the city and really a cool facility. And of course, they have their facility out west now too, and they're doing really well. But it is a tough business. Like, if you look at the average restaurant, they're in single digits on profitability as a percentage of revenue. Very, very small room for error. And it was an extremely difficult and uphill battle. I think I've had 10 or 11 liquor licenses over the years, and some much longer than others, and had many failures and a few successes, but a lot of failures, and have the scars to show it for it. But I think at the end of the day, what I realized is that in any business, it's about relationships, and that kind of interesting segue that got me into the real estate business, because I had a bank that believed in me, and that at that time was First State Bank, but it was now is Dayspring Bank, which we're here, which is kind of cool, because I had a lender named Carl Randecker that had that was still a character-based lender, which you don't have a lot of that in today's society. Everything is spreadsheets and collateral and
AI,
and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's all algorithms, and the human component is not as predominant. But if it wouldn't have been for Carl giving me a chance when I was buying single family rentals, then what ultimately evolved into my ability to build a brokerage business wouldn't have existed. So it's really important that entrepreneurs, in whatever capacity it manifests itself, that they have those opportunities that people provide them, because no entrepreneur is successful on their own. Yeah. It takes people believing in them, in either customers or banks or investors, but people have to believe in the person that has a vision and a dream. Yeah. And without those people, in this particular instance, First State Bank, now Dayspring Bank, Carl Randecker, and now his son Derek, without those people believing in you, you don't have the opportunity to reach your greatest potential. So I think it is important to remember that even though you're kind of on an island as an entrepreneur, in the sense that, the buck kind of stops with you, the success, the failure, you got to make the payments, what have you. It can't happen without incredible employees, incredible customers, incredible bankers, investors. Those things just don't happen. So every entrepreneur is a product of the environment that they've been fortunate enough to be part of.
Yeah, the way that you were describing that and just the belief and also the character, it reminded me of, did you hear Nick Sirianni's post-game interview about, great things are accomplished because of the greatness of others around you?
Right.
And I thought that was obviously applicable to me in my life, a part of a team every single day, and the things that I might accomplish individually or we might accomplish as a team is really only because of the greatness of everybody. And I think that that's cool that you're able to kind of witness that in your own journey in entrepreneurship with Dayspring Bank.
Yeah, it is true. It's I'm sure that some of these conversations have been analogous with basketball teams and building organizations, and there are a lot of parallels. It's not just for the purpose of trying to draw the similarity. I mean, you hear Mac and others say it, in the post-game interviews. You've said it, Kalkbrenner said it. You have many players that have different roles, and when your number's called, you got to do that. And I think Jemiah even said that in a post-game interview. That you have to do what is needed of you at that particular time, and that's very true in organizations. We have a lot of independent contractors, and then we have a decent sized staff, and any given day somebody's number is called, they have to measure up and meet that standard. And sometimes the worst, the cliche, the worst thing anybody could ever say is, it's not my job.
Yeah,
it's all our jobs.
Yeah.
Everything. If I have to wipe down a counter or plunge a toilet, or whether we have to have a high-level conversation about, a $10 or $20 million transaction, it doesn't matter. Everybody has a role to play, and everybody's contributing. And if we don't look at it that way, then we're not going to reach our greatest potential.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that this podcast isn't necessarily a faith-based podcast, but the way that you said that made me think of our Savior Jesus Christ and how, right, the greatest to ever live also served all. Right, and was never too big or too good to do the little things, whether it was, washing the feet of his apostles or, spending time with the outcasts, like those types of things. And I think that we can learn from his leadership of how you can be a better entrepreneur, a better leader, a better, anything in this life. And so one thing that I was thinking about is entrepreneurship. I've heard the old term of, being an entrepreneur is you're going to work 80 hours a week for yourself so you don't have to work 40 hours a week for somebody else. And it might look on social media or whatever, this glamorous thing that you get to work by yourself or work for yourself. But what has kind of been the hardest thing that maybe you knew going into it or didn't know about being an entrepreneur? And what would your advice be to other aspiring entrepreneurs?
Well, I think the greatest thing that one can kind of derive from their experience as an entrepreneur is to recognize that failure is imminent.
Uh-huh.
And that's not a natural, we kind of live in everybody gets a medal, everybody gets a trophy environment, Johnny's good, Susie's great, we're all wonderful, we're all winners. We won today.
Uh-huh.
We showed up, we won,
yeah.
And unfortunately that's, in business, that's not the way it works. So these are sort of cliches, so I apologize. You'll have to endure me a little bit. But
not at all.
The key to, I think, in my opinion, and I'm a mid-level business owner. I'm not. I alluded to this in the earlier. I'm not Bill Gates. I'm not Warren Buffett. I don't claim to be any of those things. I'm a small business owner, and so take that with a grain of salt. All of this.
We called Warren, but he didn't answer, so we got you, Tom.
So I'm second fiddle. Well, if I'm second to him, then I'm doing better than I thought. But
they also wanted Ryan to be the host, but they could only get a hold of me.
There you go. Well, I think you're doing okay, Stephen. But I think the thing is resilience.
Yeah.
And you only fail if you quit trying. It's like, it's again analogous with it's so similar to, like you had a tough game last night. Okay, fine. Turn the page. Next game. It's in the rearview mirror. We're focusing on the next opportunity. We're going to, in business and life, in relationships, we're going to have hardships. We're going to have difficulties. We're going to have, at that particular point in time, failures. But we haven't failed unless we give up. So perseverance, persistence, resilience, never say no. In sales, we always say, no means maybe and maybe means yes. It's like you don't get anything by the only person, the people that ultimately don't succeed. If you look at every high level success story, entrepreneur, far greater than anything I'll ever think of accomplishing, most of them had, with the exception of maybe the tech space and a few weird things like that, most of them had numerous failures before they reached their pinnacle. Or within their business, they had huge hardships that almost derailed their vision. Yeah. So resilience is, I know it sounds cliche, but resilience is the most important word for an entrepreneur. A never say die, never give up mentality, persistence, perseverance. It will win the day ultimately.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't know the timeline exactly of your real estate journey, but speaking on resilience, were you in real estate around 2008 or not? Or what could you kind of elaborate for us around those times with real estate and your experience so far?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the question. Actually, I was. So I got into the business in the 90s, struggled, got out, got back in the business in the middle 2000s, and got my broker's license in 2009, ironically. Okay. So I was running a little shop. There were like 6 of us, and we were plugging away. But, here's the beauty of it. At that particular time, I didn't even really know any better. Yeah. So it was what you know. Uh-huh. So it's kind of like now I'd be like, oh, my God, we've had this incredible market. But we're not in a very, it's interesting. If you look at things, and not to be a nerd about our numbers in our business, because I don't know that's terribly interesting to people, but just on a high level, if you look at our market today, in the last 2 years, 23 and 24, we actually sold less units as in the country than we did in 8, 9, and 10.
Really?
Because of the interest rate differential. I always say we don't have an interest rate problem, we have a differential problem. So the problem is not that interest rates are 7%. The problem is that they were once 3%, and that's not in that far too distant. So it's hard to get the first time and second time seller to trade up to a different home because of that interest rate environment.
Yeah, because the difference between the 3 to the 7%.
Correct. So it's a little lost on people how difficult things have been in the last 2 or 3 years. But interestingly enough, we've all gotten bailed out because prices have increased so much. So we basically get paid on the price of the house. So prices have gone up in Omaha since COVID, $100,000 on the average house. So from $263,000 to $367,000 at the end of last year. So we kind of got bailed out, so you don't hear about it as much. Yeah. But it has been more difficult. Like for example, in our market, there was less than 12,000 houses sold last year. And in 2021, there were 15,500. So it has been more challenging and trying times, and we've had to be more judicious and more creative and try to find ways that buyers and sellers can benefit, because at the end of the day, integrity matters. We don't, I would never advocate, and we're very staunch proponents of saying sometimes it's not the right time for a person to buy or sell. Yeah. And we need to be honest about that, because we're looking for relationships that will last, the entirety of a person's life. We're not in for, there are no quick bucks. There are, but you don't have longevity. So, but the industry has been more challenged. So I don't know. That's a bit of a tangent. My apologies.
No, I like that. I personally enjoy the education of this, because I'm not studying real estate all the time. And so it's fun to learn from somebody who's in it. And I'd say, like, would you say, I'm going to keep going analytical with you, is that a bubble with the whole price increase, or is the price increase going to continue and maybe the interest rates drop, or what are we seeing in the future with real estate? Yeah,
so if you look at the price increases across the country, and Omaha, cool thing about Omaha is it kind of mirrors everything in the country, but it mirrors it kind of on the positive side of whatever that is. Okay. So when things are great, they're great in Omaha. When things are terrible, they're not as good in Omaha, but they're not as bad as they are in other markets. Like the coasts have bigger swings. Yeah. So the reason that we don't see the same, my personal opinion, I say we, but I think most industry experts would echo this, or I hope they would. The difference between 2008 and 2009 is we don't have a bunch of owners with challenged economic status.
Okay.
So meaning that loans were given to people that couldn't afford the houses, and they were betting on constant appreciation. What we've seen is, yes, we had substantial appreciation, 20 to 21, huge, 21 to 22. Now that has softened. So home prices went up, 9.9% in 22, 6.1% in Omaha in 23, and 3.5% in 24. So we're normalizing, but we don't see a bubble because there's not enough inventory. Yeah. So we're still not in equilibrium. So we still have about, well, that's not true, about 120 days, 90 to 120 days less inventory than we need. So believe it or not, even though, that sales are down and it looks like, it's not a seller's market anymore, we still have issues with buyers finding the inventory that they need in a specific, category.
Yeah. So back to your Phoenix Suns versus Denver Nuggets supply and demand. We're still high demand.
Yeah. We still have we have reasonable demand for the inventory levels that we have, and obviously that demand. I mean, it's no secret, has been tapered by the interest rate environment, but it's not for the first. Affordability is a big consideration, and we need to have conversations about that. We also have issues with corporate purchasers of homes. People are like, corporations shouldn't be able to come into a mid-major market like Omaha and buy 200 houses because it affects the first-time home buyer. And I'm more for the carrot than the stick. I think we need to give incentives to first-time home buyers, subsidize interest rates through legislation, and give them grants and what have you to incentivize first-time home buyers, because affordability is an issue also with rentals.
Yeah.
So this notion that home ownership is outside of the grasp of certain segments of the population is not an unfair statement, and it shouldn't be diminished. But rentals are always also very difficult for people to pay. All these different apartments that are being built, construction costs are very high. So people are paying, exorbitant amounts of rent, and they can actually, in markets like Omaha, can actually buy and have tax advantages that are greater, just not subsidized, but just within the normal framework, like interest expense deduction, property tax deductions. So there's a little bit of misinformation, in my opinion, about what the opportunities are for first-time homebuyers. I think we need to give them an opportunity to, buy homes with products that make it affordable in the near term and allow them to build wealth. There was a statistic. The average net worth of the renter across the country is $10,000. The average net worth of a homeowner is $400,000. So it is fundamentally a wealth creator, and so pivotal for the lower and lower middle class and middle class, or we won't have a middle class if we don't continue to have home ownership.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually never realized that. You started with single home or single family rentals, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And then did you get into hospitality at all? Did I read that correct? Or
no, only restaurants. I think that hospitality communication was more oriented towards the restaurant thing. What we did was in 2015, then we got more large scale in the brokerage business. So my day-to-day activities is I run a residential brokerage called Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, the Good Life Group. And what we do is I work for independent contractors. I work for 350 independent contractors, and my job every day is to try to help them serve their clients and sell them houses. Not sell them houses, help them buy houses. Yeah. Which is a big distinction. Gotcha. There's a big distinction between selling somebody something and helping them buy something. Yeah. And sometimes the right answer is for them not to buy, or not to sell, and that's okay too. But at the end of the day, that's what I do day in and day out. And we started that in 2015 with 10 people, and we've been very fortunate. The community's been wonderful to us. We've got wonderful real estate agents and professionals that we get to work with on a day-to-day basis. I'm so blessed to work with them, and we have a wonderful staff, and it's just been a great ride. Feel very blessed.
That's awesome. A personal question in the real estate world. coming out of college, if somebody wanted like myself to get into real estate, a small portion, whether it be investment or, like you said, being a first-time homeowner, what would kind of be your advice or recommendation for someone like myself?
So, you want to pick your moments.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to buy anything. Be judicious. Look at things very analytically, and it's kind of like, I almost make it akin to a venture capitalist. They look at 20 deals before they do one.
Yeah.
Do your homework, make sure you're getting the right value that it meets. Now, on a consumer side, for the home you're going to live in, it has a little different connotation, because you have to make sure that from a lifestyle perspective, it meets your needs, because it has duality in its approach, right? It is an investment.
Yeah.
People say, oh, my personal residence is an investment. Well, it should be. You should be able to derive financial benefit from that, but it also needs to meet your needs.
Yeah.
You don't want to just buy something because it's a great deal and it's got, 2 bedrooms less than you need, or the garage space isn't adequate, or, it's not where, in a school district that, if it's not the right place where you want to send your kids, all the different factors. So on a personal level, I'm conflating the two issues, which is probably not helpful, but
no, I'm understanding. I'm following.
Yeah. On a personal level, there's a behavioral component.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, women buy houses and men buy cars, so your wife's gonna have something to say about that house. I will tell you that.
Got it.
So we think, gals are smart. That we think we buy these houses. We don't.
Yeah.
They tell us. They let us think that we're buying, that we're doing what we want, and they're buying the house because they are the heart of the home.
Yeah.
I'm not being disparaging towards guys, but it's just, it's important on your primary residence that it meets your needs first and foremost. The economic component is important, but you need it to meet your lifestyle needs.
Yeah.
And then from an investment standpoint, it has much less, lovey, touchy feely. It's economics, it's dollars and cents. But we like to say, if you can get a long-term internal rate of return, which is going to be your appreciation and your debt reduction, when you divest that asset, if you can get in the neighborhood historically of between 14 and 18%, that's a good return on investment that will outperform most index funds from the stock market perspective and what have you. And that's very attainable. Now, sometimes we get lucky and we make 25% return, and sometimes we make 5%. But
yeah.
you want to work within a framework of what you think's palatable and doable, but you have to be discerning. You have to look at opportunities, and you have to do it's like everything, you don't shoot 98% from the free throw line because you don't practice your free throws.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? You make those free throws in the games because you practice them in practice. It's the same thing. You got to look at probably 20 different investment opportunities to find the right one. Realtors are going to kill me out there. They're like, you're going to have to show them all these houses, but you do want to look at things and be careful about how you invest your money, and you don't want to just jump at the first opportunity.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's some great insight. And I feel like the whole conversation has been phenomenal, from basketball talk to real estate to hospitality and the Blue Jay bar. Just to conclude, could you give us one or two things of just whether it's life advice or, maybe the biggest key to your success in business that you would leave with the audience that's been, really applicable in your life?
Just understanding who you are, being comfortable in your own skin, and always treating people the way you want to be treated. If you are good to people, I used to think that you had to be tough and you had to go for the jugular and you had to be aggressive, and the only way to negotiate a good deal was to be the tougher and the shrewder and the more aggressive. And as I've grown older, I realized that the people that are really truly successful and fulfilled are the people that have integrity, do things from a point of kindness, try to be fair and equitable in all they do. And if you do that, you can feel good about yourself. You can look in the mirror and feel good about that. and people respond to it because people want to do business with people they like and trust.
Yeah.
And in the Midwest, you know, we're a culture that values integrity and values people doing good things, the right thing, that are charitable, that are contributors, that are community oriented. So not looking at it like you have to always, you know, the notion that it's a zero sum, I'll end on this. I'm sorry. It's long response. The idea that every negotiation is a zero sum game, that if somebody wins a certain portion, then the other person loses, is an antiquated thought process. A successful negotiation is when you can derive the benefit that you need out of it, and the other party can derive the benefit that they can need out of it. And that isn't always a zero-sum situation. Sometimes your interests or your needs aren't the same, and so that's where you successfully negotiate things. You try to find the hot points for that particular person in that negotiation. So that's just it's a general philosophy, but the idea of just being good and true to yourself is really the most important thing.
I love that. My dad's always told me that life is about relationships, and you know, that's the things that we're going to take with us into the next life. And I can definitely tell that the way that you run business and the way that you live your life is a life full of great relationships. And I'm grateful for our new relationship. And thanks for spending the time with us today.
Stephen, it's been a privilege. You've done so much for Creighton University. I can't tell you how appreciative I am and how impressive you'll do whatever you want to do in life because you're just such a talented guy, but more importantly, you're a good guy.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet.
And thanks again to Dayspring Bank for providing us this opportunity. And thanks to all you guys for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode coming soon. Go Jays.